Hello, NHL fan. The trade deadline is reaching its decisive moment, and the Toronto Maple Leafs are at the center of major expectations. The team, battling at the top of the Atlantic Division, knows it needs reinforcements if it wants to compete on equal footing with the league's best teams in the playoffs. But the big question remains, what moves will the Leafs make? With the Florida Panthers already strengthening their roster with Seth Jones and other elite teams looking to improve, Toronto cannot afford to fall behind. And according to the latest rumors, the franchise is evaluating at least 3 major trade packages that could bring in a forward and a defenseman to bolster the team. This means we could see key players coming and going, depending on the size of the deal. But are these potential moves enough to turn the Leafs into serious title contenders? What are the best options to address the team's defensive and offensive issues? Stick with me until the end, because we're going to break it all down right now. The Leafs are facing a dilemma. They have an abundance of offensive talent with Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and William Nylander, but defense has been a constant headache. And with the playoffs approaching, there is no more room for mistakes. The media has pointed out that Toronto desperately needs defensive reinforcements and more depth in the attack. But the big problem is that the trade market is highly competitive, with few teams willing to sell and many contenders fighting for the same targets. Given this scenario, speculation suggests that the Leafs are focused on trades that involve a defenseman and a forward in the same package to avoid the complications of multiple transactions. The 3 main trade packages the Leafs are reportedly considering are Scott Laughton and Rasmus Ristolainen, Philadelphia Flyers; Yanni Gourde and Jamie Alexiak, Seattle Kraken; Ryan Donato and Connor Murphy, Chicago Blackhawks. Each of these combinations would address specific team needs, but none are perfect. So, let's break down the pros and cons of each option. Scott Laughton and Rasmus Ristolainen, Philadelphia Flyers. This deal would primarily focus on strengthening the defense, with Ristolainen being the key piece. At 30 years old, he has shown solid performances recently and could be the solution the Leafs need to stabilize the defensive unit. Additionally, if the Philadelphia Flyers agree to retain part of Ristolainen's salary, Toronto could fit him under the salary cap without major issues. Laughton, on the other hand, would help solidify the offensive lineup, bringing experience and balance to the team's third line. The problem is that this trade may not fully address all the team's needs, as there would still be defensive gaps. Pros: improved defense and better offensive balance. Cons: might not be a big enough upgrade to turn Toronto into a true title contender. Yanni Gourde and Jamie Alexiak, Seattle Kraken. This is an interesting but also controversial package. Alexiak is an experienced and physically imposing defenseman, which is always an asset in the playoffs. However, as a left-handed defenseman, he might disrupt the team's defensive structure, forcing McCabe to play out of his ideal position. Meanwhile, Yanni Gourde is a player who has shined in the playoffs before and could bring experience and competitiveness to the Leafs offense. But does he still have the same impact as he did a few years ago? That remains a big question. Pros: playoff experience and increased physical presence on defense. Cons: might not be the ideal solution for the Leafs' defensive issues. Ryan Donato and Connor Murphy, Chicago Blackhawks. This might be the best option of the 3. Donato is having a strong season and would add firepower to the Leafs' attack, something essential for the playoffs. Additionally, he can play as a center, giving the offensive lines more flexibility. However, the key player in this deal would be Connor Murphy, a physical and reliable defenseman who has significantly improved in recent years. He would help solve one of the Leafs' biggest problems: the lack of defensemen capable of shutting down powerful offenses. Pros: good balance between offense and defense, significant defensive improvement. Cons: Murphy wouldn't be a game-changing defenseman, but rather a solid upgrade. Now, the big question: which of these options makes the most sense for Toronto? If the Leafs want to prioritize defense, the trade for Ristolainen might be the safest bet. But if they're looking for a balanced approach between offense and defense, the package with Arenado and Murphy seems like the best alternative. On the other hand, the Leafs might attempt a bolder move, pursuing a bigger name on the market. There are rumors that Toronto is monitoring other players beyond those mentioned, including experienced defensemen who could make an immediate impact on the team. But with the trade deadline fast approaching, time is running out. The fact is, the Leafs must make a move. If they stand still while their competitors strengthen, they'll be relying even more on luck in the playoffs, and that's never a good strategy. So, Leafs fans, which trade do you think would be the best for Toronto? Should the team focus on defense or aim for a more balanced approach with offensive reinforcements? Could Toronto surprise everyone and go after an even bigger name before the deadline? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss the possibilities and predict the Leafs' future. And of course, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates on the NHL and the Maple Leafs. Stay tuned because this final stretch of trades promises to be electrifying. See you next time.